Hey guys, welcome to this session of Win-Loss Week. My name is Andrew Peterson. I'm one of the founders of Clozd, and Clozd is excited to be hosting this 3-day event about win-loss analysis in hopes of helping companies win more. We are focusing the event on thought leadership sessions about win-loss specifically, but more broadly also around how B2B companies can improve their go-to-market and win more. So thanks for registering. Thanks for joining. This is just going to be a quick session on 4 ways to level up your existing win-loss program. So at Clozd, we are a leading provider of services and technology for win-loss analysis. We work with dozens of leading brands in various industries to help them roll out comprehensive win-loss programs for their businesses so they can be uncovering the real reasons why they win and lose, and then taking action on that insight to help their company win more. And I've taken some of the key lessons we've learned as we've worked with a wide variety of brands on how you can take an existing win-loss program and level it up to be more impactful and to drive meaningful transformational change for your business. And so to kick things off, I just wanted to highlight a piece of content that we have available. It's the State of Win-Loss Analysis report. This is a report that we put together at Clozd in conjunction with the Pragmatic Institute, and we released this earlier this year. And it's a study where we just surveyed hundreds of companies about their current practices pertaining to win-loss analysis and uncovered some interesting data. And you can use this QR code here to download a copy for free of this report and take a look and kind of benchmark and compare your organization's current efforts with win-loss analysis to what other companies tend to be doing. And some interesting findings from that report. First, 79% of companies reported that they already practice some form of win-loss analysis. And this is very different from data that was captured in similar studies just 4 or 5 years ago. I think 4 to 5 years ago, the Pragmatic Institute did a similar study and found that about 20% of companies were practicing win-loss analysis. So there's already been a dramatic shift in companies realizing that there's a gap in their understanding of why they win and lose. And there's a need for better data, a data-driven approach to capturing the real reasons why they win and lose so they can win more. And something else that was interesting was that 64% of the win-loss programs were less than 2 years old. And so not surprisingly, a lot of companies are new to win-loss analysis. They're implementing it potentially for the first time at their organizations. And so a lot of companies are new and they're looking for ways to mature or develop their approach to win-loss analysis to drive better results for their businesses. And the last thing that was really interesting was that 98% of companies intend to either maintain or expand their level of investment in win-loss analysis. So companies are clearly seeing benefits from this exercise, and most companies intend to invest more and more in this practice going forward. So naturally, one of the questions that we often get is, we have an existing win-loss program. How can we level up our program to drive greater impact for our organization? And this is a question we actually got quite a bit after last year's Win-Loss Week event. A lot of people saying, hey, these sessions were really fascinating. A lot of people talked about the value that they're getting from their win-loss programs, some of the things that they've learned. Some people talked about how to get started initially, but we would have liked more content about how do we take an existing win-loss program and take it to the next level. And so that's what I wanted to address in this short session, is just some very direct, actionable steps that you can take to evaluate your current win-loss program and hopefully level it up going forward and drive greater impact for your organization. So I've got 4 things I want to cover. The first is leveling up your data quality. The second one is leveling up your pipeline coverage. Third is leveling up your speed to insight. And the fourth is leveling up your stakeholder engagement. So diving into number 1, how can you level up your data quality and what does that mean? Ultimately, the value of win-loss analysis and win-loss data comes down to the quality of the underlying data. How rich and how accurate are the sources of data that you're using to base your analysis on? And so it's important that as you evaluate your current win-loss program, you take a close look at how much of the data that we're analyzing comes directly from the best source being actual buyers, decision makers at the accounts that you've won and lost. Those ultimately are the individuals who know the answer of why they made the decision that they made. Companies rely heavily when they first start with win-loss analysis on internal data sources, things like existing CRM data or input and feedback from their sales team. But they quickly realize as they go through that exercise that something is missing. And what's missing is the rich, candid feedback of the actual decision makers at won and lost accounts. So some of you may be like, yeah, we got this, we're doing that now. Others may say, hey, actually, the analysis we've been doing to date has been primarily based on CRM data and sales rep reporting, and that is not good enough. That's not ultimately going to give you a robust and accurate answer about why you win and lose. Those are good data sources, and you need those as part of a holistic approach. But the most important, the most accurate source of data is the buyer. And to follow that up, when you do solicit feedback from buyers, you want to promote candor and minimize bias in what they tell you. And so the best way that you can do that is to leverage a neutral third party, a party that's objective, where that buyer perceives that they can be candid about the real reasons that they made the decisions that they made. And so involving a third party adds cost to your program, but is a really important step to make sure that you get the most robust feedback possible. And finally, you want to make sure that whenever you do engage a buyer for direct feedback through an interview, for example, that your approach is adaptive and probing and qualitative. Decision makers, especially in a B2B context, are considering a lot of different factors as they make a decision. And there's often multiple parties involved in making that decision or influencing that decision. And to uncover all of that, you need to take a very open-ended approach and be adaptive in how you ask for feedback from them. And so make sure if you've incorporated win-loss interviews into your win-loss analysis strategy or program, that whenever an interview is conducted, that you're taking a very adaptive, open-ended approach, that you're actively listening, or whoever the party is that's conducting these interviews, that they're actively listening and asking good probing follow-up questions to dig several layers deeper about these factors that influence the buyer's final decision. So those are just some ways that you can level up your data quality, would be to capture more buyer feedback, leverage a third party in collecting that feedback, and make sure that any win-loss interviews that are conducted aren't scripted, rote phone surveys, but are rather very adaptive, very probing conversations with the buyers so that you can uncover each unique situation in its fullness. The next thing you can evaluate and potentially upgrade about your win-loss program is your pipeline coverage. What we mean by that is you have a certain number of deals flowing through your sales pipeline throughout any given month, quarter, or year, and your win-loss program needs to cover as much of that pipeline as possible. You're going to get a better answer, a more robust answer, if you cover more of your sales pipeline and more deals are represented. And so ultimately, you should strive for a situation where you are inviting every single buyer to give feedback on their evaluation. That means every closed won or closed lost opportunity should be followed up with an invitation to the buyer to give their feedback. We get a lot of questions from first-time practitioners saying, what's a statistically significant sample size? Like, what's the least amount of data that we can collect and still feel confident that we're answering the question and we're answering it right? But if you think about other contexts where companies collect feedback, think, for example, of customer experience or NPS. Delta Airlines doesn't just collect a statistically significant sample size of customer satisfaction across all of their flights globally year-round. They try to capture feedback after every single flight from every passenger, every single interaction that they have with a passenger. They try to capture feedback about that because they want to be able to then go back later and drill down in their data set and see, are there certain routes where we're having issues? Are there certain call center teams that are having issues when they respond to customer calls? Are there certain segments of customers that have different levels of satisfaction than other segments? They want to be able to look at all of those things. And if you stopped at just the minimum number of responses to consider it statistically significant, all you'd have is a very broad, sweeping answer about the business as a whole. You wouldn't have the ability to pinpoint areas of the business and derive actionable insight in those areas. And it's the same with win-loss analysis. You need to cover every single decision that's made because you want to be able to have coverage and to drill down into certain customer segments, certain geographic regions, certain product lines. You don't want to be limited by having a very small sample size covering your entire business. You want to ideally solicit feedback from every single buyer about the evaluation of your products or services. And so as you do that, ideally you would interview every single buyer, but sometimes that's not cost effective or necessary. And so interview as many buyers as is feasible or possible, given the nature of your business, the size of your deals, the velocity of your pipeline. All of those factors have to be considered. But once they are, survey the rest of your pipeline. Don't leave any buyer untouched with an invitation to give feedback. And remember that not every buyer will give you feedback. Survey participation rates are particularly low. A lot of people are surprised to find out that interview participation rates are much higher than survey participation rates in a B2B context. Oftentimes we'll see companies with 20 or 30 or even 40% participation rates when inviting a buyer to give feedback in an interview versus 5 or 10% participation rates when sending out a survey to those same buyers. So it's important to consider that as you develop your strategy for how many interviews you want to send out, how many survey invitations you want to send out. But whoever you're not going to interview, make sure you're taking advantage of getting feedback from the others by surveying them at the very least. And then augment that data with that original data we talked about, the CRM data and the sales rep feedback, because those are two very comprehensive sources of data that will cover all of your deals. So it can help plug some of the gaps and make sure you have full coverage of your pipeline. But you don't want to limit it to just those two data sources because the quality is poor, and what is in the CRM is completely dependent on what your internal team is entering in the CRM. And sales reps just naturally have some bias. There's studies that have been done in the past where sales reps were wrong about why deals were won and lost about 60% of the time. So you can't really fully rely on them, but it's good to have their perspective and be able to compare that to what buyers are saying. The next thing you can evaluate about your program and potentially level up would be your speed to insight. How quickly are you capturing this feedback and making it available to stakeholders in your organization so they can take action on it? Ideally, you're going to solicit feedback as soon as possible after a deal is closed. So you ideally want to strive for a win-loss program where as soon as deals are closed won or closed lost in the CRM, you have a process that's automated through CRM integration to initiate that feedback loop so that buyers aren't waiting around for a long time and forgetting some of the nuances of the decision that they made before you invite them to give feedback. You want to be quick and immediate about reaching out for feedback. That's going to increase your participation rates, and it's going to increase the quality of insight that you get from them, and it's going to feel more relevant to the buyer that you're asking for it right then and there, as opposed to waiting 3 or 4 months. So if you're in a situation right now where it's a monthly or even a quarterly cadence to pulling your lists and then reaching out for feedback, that's okay. That's better than nothing. But the ideal to strive for would be to automate invitations as soon as deals are closed won or closed lost. And finally, you also want to level up your speed to insight by kicking off the insight to your internal stakeholders immediately when that feedback is received. That makes it a lot more engaging for your stakeholders, whether they be sales leaders, marketing leaders, product leaders, members of the executive team, whoever it might be. It's going to be a lot more interesting for them to see and review feedback of a deal that's very recent, that's still on everyone's minds. And so if you can increase that speed to insight and deliver the insight directly to your stakeholders automatically once it's collected, it's going to have a much bigger impact on your business and make it easy for you guys to make changes on the fly that are relevant, that are timely to help you guys win more. And then the last thing that you can evaluate or look at improving about your current program is leveling up your stakeholder engagement. That means securing executive level sponsorship for your program. At the end of the day, win-loss analysis is always going to surface some really critical, sometimes painful feedback about your business. And it can be difficult as the program sponsor, if you sit in marketing or sit in sales, to go to the product team and say, hey, we need to fix this. Or if as the program sponsor, you sit in product and you realize that, hey, product's great, but we need to change our pricing or we need to change something about our sales process. It can be difficult to navigate your organization and drive those changes to areas of the business that you don't have oversight of. And so it's critical the first successful, impactful, transformational win-loss program, that you have executive level sponsorship and that the C-suite is bought into the program, that they are funding the program adequately to pay for this kind of program we've been describing, where you are getting comprehensive coverage of your pipeline and conducting lots of win-loss interviews and complementing that with surveys and so on and so forth. You're going to need some substantial funding of the program. And you're also going to want to have readouts with those executive stakeholders on a regular basis, potentially as part of quarterly business reviews, where you dive into the themes behind all the feedback you've been collecting so that you can drive positive change for the business. If the C-suite is bought in and they are funding the program, sponsoring the program, speaking in favor of the program, eager to see the results, and then consuming the feedback on a regular basis, it's going to transform how this program impacts your organization. You also need to culturally embrace transparency, and you need to root out what some psychologists would call cognitive avoidance, this phenomenon where humans like to avoid critical feedback or painful truths because they can hurt, and some people would rather just not deal with it. And we've seen that with some companies where culturally they're a little bit averse to win-loss feedback because it can be painful and it can raise concerns about the way you're currently running things, either in sales and marketing or in product or wherever else. And some companies just shy away and they don't want to hear it, or some leaders of certain functions might shy away. You need to embrace transparency and promote a culture in your organization where people want to hear the hard truths so that collectively you can get better. Not so that anyone can blame anyone else, but so that collectively as a whole you can all get smarter. You can embrace truth, actual truth about currently why you win and lose, so that you can then take the necessary steps to make adjustments and ultimately win more. And to help with that process of improving transparency, leverage technology. There's more technology available today than there ever has been in the past to help you with the widespread sharing of win-loss data with key stakeholders across your business in real time in a format that's easy to consume, easy to digest, easy to talk about, etc. So make sure that you are finding ways to get the executive team involved in the program, bought in, sponsoring it, reviewing the feedback with you, and then that you're driving the feedback out to the entire organization rather than being a bottleneck and holding that insight back. Make sure you set up processes and tools and ways for the information you're capturing in the program to be available in real time to all the different stakeholders so that they can all play around with the data, look at it themselves, and have it inform how they think about the business and the decisions that they're making for their areas of the business. To close things today, I just want to jump into a few helpful resources that Clozd provides that can help you take these next steps and learn a little bit more. One thing we offer, our most popular piece of content, is the Definitive Guide to Win-Loss Analysis. It's a comprehensive step-by-step guide to establishing a transformational win-loss program. So it'll dive even deeper into these topics we've talked about today. The second thing is Clozd's Learning Center. This is available on our website under resources. It's called Learning Center. It goes through in-depth how to get started with a win-loss program, best practices for a great win-loss program, and some of the ROI and benefits of a great win-loss program that can help you build a business case to drive this expansion and this increased funding of your win-loss initiative. Lastly, if you aren't sure where to find technology to help you drive this sort of a program, to help automate your win-loss data collection and automate the delivery and the visualization and the sharing of the feedback, take a closer look at Clozd. We'd love to walk you through the technology that we're building. The Clozd platform is a first of its kind platform that can help you manage the win-loss process start to finish. And so if you're hung up at any point in the process and need a little bit of help or realize that you need to tech enable your program a little bit more, we'd love to help. So just reach out and let us know, and we'll set you up with a demo and walkthrough of what we can do for you. Thanks so much for jumping on. I hope this has been insightful and helpful to those of you who are currently practicing win-loss analysis, but have been looking for ways that you can level up your program and drive greater outcomes for your business. If you have any follow-up questions for me specifically, jump on LinkedIn, connect with me, DM me. I'd love to have a dialogue with you. On phone, on chat, wherever is easiest for you. So don't hesitate to link up with me on LinkedIn, and send questions over and maybe even set up a time to meet. Love to meet you. So thanks so much. Thanks for registering for Win Loss Week. We really appreciate the support.